Sorry.
We're quite used to hearing managers say they want less games, too many games. Feels from the first part that you may be saying you'd like more games. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Because, I mean, I think when, again, for us, a club like us who wants to, sort of, when you want to compete, at the highest level against the best, you need a strong squad. To have a strong squad, you need consistent games and consistent game time and opportunities. So, at the moment, if we get an injury, we're liable to throw in somebody who hasn't played for 4 or 5 weeks. It just doesn't, it's not easy on that player. Whereas if you've got games, there's a natural rotation that you need to make there all the time, and also gives you a little bit of rhythm. Whereas, I'm not saying, I had the other extreme last year, or the last couple of years at Celtic, we were playing 60 plus games a year, but I found that a lot easier to manage than having less games or, like I said, having a disrupted season like we've had this year.
So you don't, because Europe's kicking in again for the clubs around you, don't think you've got an advantage now until the end of the season in that you've got fewer games?
I don't know. I don't think there's advantage or disadvantage. It depends how you use that time. But if you're asking me would I rather be in Europe, absolutely. 1,000% I'd rather be in Europe at this time playing games.
How do you sort of recreate that? Intensity is obviously a massive part of your style. And I guess it's very difficult to recreate that match intensity with these long weeks of training. But I guess you've got to try. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges of that?
Yeah, we do try and sort of replicate. You can't, obviously you can't do it sort of exactly the same way as game day because there are other sort of, variants that come into that. But certainly on a daily basis, we try and train at a tempo and intensity that's going to be close to replicating what happens on game day. And we've done that consistently all year anyway, irrespective of whether we've got a game or not. What we adjust is the amount of time we're out there. So, if we want a less volume session, we just, tone down the time. So, we're out there for less minutes, but the intensity and tempo stays the same. So, and I think it's probably been the one area of our game this year that's been consistent. And if there's one area of our game that's kind of got us to where we are right now, it has been that when you look at some of the physical parameters across the league, we've been outstanding, and I think that's kind of helped us overcome, the lack of, for want of a better term, sort of the quality in our play at times.
You're talking about data, but what the data showing you? Can you be a bit more specific about what yardage cover? Or?
No, it's just, most of the, I think most of the high-speed metrics, I think we'd be top of the league. So, and like I said, I think you need something. I mean, I try and paint an accurate picture of how I feel about how we're going, but we're going okay. We're going maybe better than okay, and I think there's a reason for that. And you can look for reasons why we're not going better, but there's some pretty strong reasons why we are where we are as well.
And just back to Richarlison, he was pretty open about his mental, psychological obstacles he had earlier this season. It was a bit of a setback for him personally, this injury. How is he psychologically?
Yeah, no, as far as I know, he's disappointed he's injured and he's not playing. But, aside from that, he's sort of into his rehab now, and he's, luckily we've got sort of the international break in between, so hopefully only means he'll miss sort of the couple of games this side of it and be ready for after.
With all these injuries this season, back to pre-season where Ange Postecoglou described you as the father-like figure. Does it feel like you've had to, that sort of pastoral element of looking after the players has to be on another level this season?
To a certain extent, but at the same time, I'm not a sort of one-man show. There's a lot of good people at the club that, and a lot of the coaches and a lot of the sort of, medical sports science staff spend a lot more time with the players individually than I do. And, I think they've done a great job in sort of helping guys through their processes. Obviously, I'm there, when needed, or if I feel like I need to sort of, help the process as much as I can. But also, I understand that, a lot of times, players have maybe closer relationships or are more comfortable with people they're working a lot closer with on a daily basis. And, I think that's important. But again, it's not where we want to be. You know, as I keep saying, I still think there's a lot of things we need to adjust in the way we work, and you know, with our environment, which is not you know, being critical of what we've got at the moment, but it was impossible that everything was going to change in 8 months or 9 months of me working here. So we've still got areas we can improve there.
Just finally, Brian Sessegnon, after he had surgery, put a message out on social media in which he basically appealed to fans to be kind, effectively, not abusing online, which was quite pressing to read. What did you make of that, and what does that say about where we're at? Yeah, look,
I didn't read it. You know, they made me aware of it, and look, I guess the easy thing to say is, look, just stay off social media. But and it's easy for me to say, and I can do that. But I guess for younger people, it's a vehicle for them, or a platform for them to kind of have a voice, which I can't understand. But you also, you know, they've got to be mature enough to also know that sometimes the audience, you know, I think, for want of a better term, social media is like walking into the prison yard and saying you're innocent. You're not going to get a hell of a lot of sympathy, you know, and most of it's going to be coming back at you, you know. So if you're kind of prepared for that, then, you know, but if you're jumping in there to try and feel good, my sense of it, and like I said, I'm not all over it, but you'll rarely come away feeling any really good about yourself, even with the most, you know, genuine of reasons for saying what you want to say, or putting out what you want to put out. It's just that kind of platform that you invariably, you're going to come away from it probably thinking I shouldn't have said anything.
Tom. And there's obviously been a huge amount of injuries for Spurs this season. What do you think the kind of stop-start nature of the season, maybe lack of match rhythm, is even contributing?
Look, I think it's something you look at sort of from an overall perspective. There's no doubt that also the change in the training regime has an impact as well, because it's not something that, you know, it's the first time I've experienced. You know, it's happened to me before when I've come into clubs that, you know, the first year there's always a little bit of an uptick in injuries. We've had sort of unusual ones this year. I mean, we lost Perisic and Solomon with knee injuries, you know, training at the beginning of the year, which was a bit, you know, random. So you kind of, you know, you like to think that's not always going to happen, but a lot of the injuries are just the way we train and the way we play, and, you know, players understanding that, sports science stuff, understanding that, medical team understanding that, and making adjustments. Some of it, I think, could be the schedule, that we just haven't had a clean run at it. So I think but all those things you kind of review along the way. But more importantly, when you get to the end of the year, I think it's important you keep an open mind and kind of look at every area and see, you know, because I don't think you should be dismissive of it and just think, oh, well, it was just a one-off, it's never going to happen again. That, you know, you kind of got to look into it and see whether we can do things better next year, so that, you know, if the schedule's a bit better and we do have, you know, European football, then, yeah, that adds a different sort of challenge to us, but hopefully we're better prepared for it.
It feels like a high intensity game. You talk about high speed and sort of thing. It's kind of you can't just do without the muscle and doing it over it.
Yeah, and you know, there's and it's, some of it's just, you know, the players getting used to it themselves, physically, mentally, every day, sort of training at those levels and then performing at those levels. And I certainly, just my experience, I see that over time, you know, they do become, you know, their bodies adjust and they become more resilient to it. But there's also a science to it, which is not my field, that helps us along in that way. But I think that is a contributing factor to kind of, you know, why we've had sort of the disruptions we've had.
So is there one thing you change in the schedule to make it a bit more smoother for everybody? Those who are playing those who are not playing?
No, not really, because I mean, again, some of our disruptions is self-inflicted. You know, if it had a better run in the cups and if we're in Europe, then I wouldn't be sitting here doing so. Some of it's in our control, but you know, like I said, when you look at this year, and you know, I just think I just haven't felt and maybe it's because of the contrast of where I've come from, where, like I said, at Celtic, we were having games every 3 days, and you kind of get into that mode, and just the start of the year felt like that. We were playing games, there was rhythm, there was momentum there, and then just since then we've just kind of haven't been able to get the same sort of flow and rhythm into our schedule, and obviously some of that's our own sort of doing. So you got to accept that, one way to remedy that is to make sure we get more games for ourselves next year.
You want to change that half-life to winter break?
Yeah, I don't know. Even that sort of this year was kind of a bit weird. So, I don't know. Look, far be it from me to get involved in scheduling, mate. I'm good at being told where to be and what to do.
Just actually one more on the answer you gave us about social media, which is interesting. Have you said that to the players, or do you leave the young people alone?
No, you kind of give them advice, but I like I said, at the same time, I'm always reticent to kind of dictate, because I'm not in their shoes, and who's to say if I wasn't, in my early 20s living today as a footballer, that I wouldn't be all over social media. So I'll maybe sit there now. It's like when people say to me, well, you can't get kids off their iPads or off their PlayStations. In our day, we're always outside. Well, to be fair, we had no option. If we had the option, maybe I would have been inside too. So you've got to try and have some sort of understanding. But at the same time, I do try and provide a little bit of counsel in terms of, they need to understand that everything you have, access to in your life, for whatever good stuff you get out of it, there's always kind of a responsibility and understanding, and there needs to be a maturity that there's a possibility of not so good stuff being there as well, and you've got to be prepared for that. If you're not, or if you're kind of, it affects you really badly if it comes the other way, then you're probably better off. It's probably a sense that you're not ready for entering that world. But again, that's advice from an old bloke, mate. I don't know how much they listen, and I don't know how much of it's right. So, like I said, all I can do is provide counsel sort of from my experience.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.